Video games ratings boards are an absolute joke. That's what I think. Especially after this latest NBA 2K20 trailer, in which they highlighted the fact that this game is intended for 3-year-olds and above, PEGI 3, before highlighting glorified gambling. Stuff like the card packs, which are pay to win, very much gambling. You can spend real money on these things. Stuff like the ball drop game, which is a game of chance. The slot machine, which is right here, alongside fake reactions like this guy right here cheering for the fact that he just frickin' nailed the highest tier reward right here. And then there is the roulette, which yields all kinds of rewards. And alongside all of this as well, there's this dumbass reaction right here. Again, the fantasy. This is what they're trying to sell us. As I called it in my last video, the pornographication of gambling. And all of that ends with this guy getting LeBron James, one of the most desirable player cards in the game. So this is all selling this idea that if you gamble in this game, you will be rewarded. You will look like this guy, just screaming with joy. All of this intended for 3-year-olds and above. And if you look at the American trailer, that's an E for everyone. Now, I do want to make one clarification. While you can directly pay for the card packs by buying VC, virtual currency, which you can spend on the packs, when it comes to the ball drop game, this is something that I have to take notes on this because this whole system is so confusing, and it's purposely confusing because the more layers they add to this whole system, the harder it is for people to gauge real-world value to these things. But when it comes to the ball drop game, this is something that you get quote-unquote rewarded with by playing this mode called Triple Threat. It's a 3v3 mode, and if you play these matches, you'll occasionally be able to do this ball drop minigame, and based on where the ball lands, you will earn a variety of rewards. Mostly just MT, ranging from 1,000, 3,000, 2,000. And MT is a second currency, separate from VC, used specifically for my team. You can use these to buy card packs, or you can go to the auction house and purchase individual players. And while MT isn't supposed to be currency that you can purchase with real money, there is, unsurprisingly, already a black market where you can just buy MT outright using real dollars. So there's that element to consider. The slot machines, this is something that is awarded if you win a triple threat match. And it grants you this spin, and based on what you get here, you can either win MT, you can win a Standard League award, or you can win some tokens. Tokens is a third currency that you can spend on this separate market called the rewards market. And that's a whole thing within itself, where you have to spend tokens on 10 of a lower rarity before you can move on to buying things of the next rarity, and that cycle continues, and I don't know. And then there's the roulette, where you are awarded everything from tokens to MT to card packs to the creme de la creme, these valuable individual players. And the fantasy presented here is that if you engage in roulette, you will be like this guy. You will earn the coveted reward of this valuable player. And roulette is something you can participate in if you log in 7 days in a row in a given week. That encourages players to come to the game every day, to put a little bit of work in, to become emotionally attached to the game, and that elevates engagement as well as monetization. These are all elements that Jörn Strom covered in that keynote, the whaling keynote that I previously discussed in one of my last videos. And a lot of people are taking the fact that you can't technically spend money on the roulette, on the slot machine, and on the ball drop game, the fact that you can't spend money on these directly and saying, well, there you go, that exonerates the game. But the rewards, all of these rewards tie directly right back to the game's core monetization system, the packs, the MT, the VC. It's all a vicious cycle where, yes, you're given a free spin of some gambling system to get a reward, but that free gambling leads right back to the paid gambling. And it encourages people to feel this sense of security with gambling systems like this, with games of chance. Also, do keep in mind that a lot of this information is based on two things. One, what we know about NBA 2K19, which implemented a lot of these systems in a similar way, and this blog post on Facebook in regards to how my team will function in 2020. Who's to say how 2K will modify things down the line? Maybe there will eventually be a way to do extra spins of slot machines, roulette, ball drops by paying extra. Something like that. Something that pushes the boundary, the goalposts just a little bit in an attempt to normalize this even further. You never know with these companies because it's so easy for them to just update a game and modify the monetization system on a whim just like that. Case in point, the transition from 2K17 to 2K18, that was a big eye-opener. 2K18 was pretty nefarious in how it decreased the amount of currency you earn, and how they modified the design in such a way that it pressures players into further spending. There is always room for monetization systems to evolve and get worse compared to a previous entry. Keep that in mind. But even putting all of that aside, nobody can defend the fact that these are casino games. These are adult theme visuals being presented in a game that's supposed to be family friendly. Let's get that out of the way, okay? That is irrefutable. They're selling an adult activity to kids, period. And plenty of outlets are picking up on this. Website Polygon, for example, published an article whose headline reads, NBA 2K20's loot boxes aren't gambling? You wouldn't know from this trailer. Slot machines, pachinko, and prize wheels dominate a game that's supposedly basketball. And this is despite the fact that Take-Two president, and Take-Two is the parent company to 2K, and 2K is the publisher of NBA 2K. Take-Two president said, "We don't view loot boxes as gambling." This was back in November 2017. And yet here we are, a game where loot boxes are at the core of the progression system, and all of that is linked together with games of chance like ball drop, slot machine, and roulette. They think they're untouchable. These CEOs think they are untouchable. To the point where they're brazen enough to release trailers like this. And alongside these executives, the people who are supposed to be regulating this stuff, defending consumers from exploitation, are saying, oh, loot boxes aren't gambling. The ESRB, the USA's ratings board, insists that video game loot boxes aren't gambling. PEGI insists on the same thing, saying that they can't define what's gambling. The Gambling Commission can. Well, guess what? You as a ratings board have the power to say, that seems like gambling. We're going to rate it as an adult game. You have the power to do that as a self-regulatory body, and yet for some reason you refuse to do so. Why is that? Things get really bizarre when we look at some of the games they have rated higher than NBA 2K. So we know for a fact that NBA 2K20 is going to be PEGI 3. NBA 2K19 is also PEGI 3, despite having similar gambling-like systems. And then there's games like FIFA, implementing similar gambling-like systems, PEGI 3. So it baffles me when I look at a game like Pokemon, and I see that this is rated PEGI 12. And the reasoning is going to have you in stitches given the present circumstances. This game was rated PEGI 12 for moving images that encourage the use of games of chance that are played as a traditional means of gambling. So for those who've played Pokemon Red and Blue and what have you, will recall that there is a segment where you're in this casino and you can partake in these mini-games, except that these are very simple mini-games. They don't have crazy visual flares and audio effects like a lot of the loot boxes. And B, you cannot in any way, shape, or form spend real currency on these things. It all happens in-game. It is a completely self-confined pretend gambling system that doesn't even have that much of an effect on the overarching gameplay design of Pokemon. A completely different story from this. All of this, all the rewards you gain from the free gambling spins of roulette, of slot machines, of ball drop, all of this ties into a system that you can spend real money on. There is simulated gambling and real gambling in this. And by the ESRB zone stipulations, games with simulated gambling are supposed to be rated teen, and games with real gambling are supposed to be rated adult only. And yet this is treated as E for everyone or PEGI 3, while Pokemon, for having one of the least nefarious, simplest portrayals of gambling, that have no real-world impact, that have not much of an overarching impact to the game itself. This is deemed as PEGI 12, while NBA 2K gets to get away with a rating of PEGI 3. Now, here's where things get even more fun. This is an article from back in March 2015. This is an article from Games Industry titled, "Why is the Grand Theft Auto CEO also chairman of the ESRB?" The Grand Theft Auto CEO is also the CEO of Take-Two, the publisher of Grand Theft Auto. I'm referring, of course, to Strauss Zelnick, infamous in the realm of the games industry with the practices that he encourages. He is deeply involved with the ESA, the parent organization to the ESRB, which is the ratings board. At one time, he was the chairman of the ESRB. Now, that has since changed. In this article right here from 2017, it's been relayed that, quote, "There was also a significant change on the board. In the summer of 2017, the tenure of the then head of the ESA's board of directors, Strauss Zelnick, ended, and Robert Altman, chairman and CEO of ZeniMax Media, became the new chairman of the ESA's board." So Strauss Zelnick is still involved as part of the board of directors of the ESA, but it's now being led by the CEO of ZeniMax Media. Suffice to say that Strauss Zelnick has a lot of pull in the regulatory body of the games industry. The CEO of the company that stands to benefit from loot boxes and releasing trailers like this with glorified gambling alongside pornographied reactions to events that are unlikely for the average Joe, getting the best player, getting LeBron James in NBA 2K. The guy promoting this stuff has influence, significant influence, with both the ESA and the ESRB. So when you look at it that way, perhaps it should come as no surprise that this game is rated PEGI 3. It should come as no surprise that in the US, this is E for everyone. You know something's real fucked up when Pokemon is seen as less kid-friendly than the casino-infested NBA 2K20. You know there's something seriously messed up behind the scenes. There's a lot of string pulling going on back there. I don't actually disagree with labeling Pokemon as PEGI 12 if it does have images of gambling. What gets me is that NBA 2K20, which is far more nefarious, isn't being given the same treatment. This game should be a mature rated game, at least. I'd say it should be an adult-only game, given that it has actual gambling in it. But it certainly isn't PEGI 3 or E for everyone. Also worth noting is that the ESRB and PEGI, as well as other rating sports, are in some ways in cahoots with each other. Here's an excerpt from the ESRB's Wikipedia page. In November 2012, the ESRB and other video game ratings boards, including PEGI, the Australian Classification Board, and USK, among others, established a consortium known as the International Age Rating Coalition. The group sought to design an online questionnaire-based rating process for digitally distributed video games that could generate ratings for multiple video game ratings organizations at once. So suffice to say that there is some kind of crossover between the ESRB and PEGI. They coordinate in some way, and I'm not going to claim to know exactly what goes on behind the scenes, but based on everything I'm seeing here, I can only surmise that Strauss-Zelnick can pull some strings and ensure that NBA 2K20 is not only rated E for everyone in the US, but also PEGI 3 across Europe. Because there is no other way that Pokemon can be rated as PEGI 12 for showing brief visual images of gambling and having this very kind of inconsequential gambling-like minigame versus NBA 2K20 and 19. This disparity cannot be described as being attributed to human error or something like that. No. Strings must have been pulled behind the scenes because it takes the smallest semblance of common sense to realize that NBA 2K19 and 20 are without question far less kid-friendly than Pokemon based on the systems that it enacts. It's clear as day. I want to close this video with this tweet from Nina. She said, as a mother of two, I absolutely agree with you on the parenting part. I'm a gamer myself, so I taught my kids very early on about the topic and had always full control over it. But most parents are not coming from that place and need to be taught where the traps are lying in those games. That's happening too slow at the moment, and the damage is so often already done to a family bank account. Indeed, the games industry does a piss-poor job of informing parents about parental tools, about the existence of nefarious systems in a game. And there is the fact that if parents are looking out for games with nefarious elements, the games industry will lie to you anyway by telling you that games like NBA 2K20 is kids-friendly, that it's E for everyone or PEGI 3. So it's all useless anyway. The post continued, also, those publishers should be responsible just as much as the parents. Those mechanics, the slot machines, roulette, etc., even when it's free, is introducing young people to gambling in a false security. They feel safe because it's free, so in the next game, they'll maybe spend real money easier on those gambling things because another game has given them a false positivity and taught them the wrong approach. And often parents can't stop this all by themselves when kids show off their new skins or rare cards to each other and the need to compete arises. Indeed, there is that social pressure. So I want to close on that. And once again, just highlight the hypocritical nature of the current ratings board system, which is not doing its job. Because when NBA and FIFA can be rated PEGI 3, but not Pokemon Red, that's when you know it's time for the government to interfere. It's not the ideal solution, but it is a better solution than this. Because it's clear that because gambling is so monetizable in games, and because these ratings boards are being lobbied by the executives who run the ratings boards and the organizations that are supposed to be watchdogs for video game consumers, you're going to see skewed results like this. This is the bullshit that will keep happening unless an entity of higher power interferes and enacts regulations that can act as overwatch for a games industry that refuses to act responsibly and regulate itself. Anyway, I'd love to hear what your take is on all of this in the comments below. With that, I would like to end this news update and discussion video. Thank you for tuning in. To be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Yong Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Yong out.